A continuar, en esa visión de conjunto que les anunciaba por la mañana, después de la introducción de tipo general que hemos escuchado, pues ahora vamos a referirnos más al aspecto más concreto ahora de demencias. Ya les dije que entraremos y saldremos entre demencia y solamente aspectos de personas mayores. Y después lo veremos sobre exteriores, diseño de espacios urbanos. Y va a ser una síntesis la sesión que vamos a tener después del almuerzo, la sesión de la tarde, porque en una mesa redonda sin un guión demasiado cerrado vamos a volver a recapitular. Vamos a intentar ver cuáles son los retos, cuáles los beneficios, cuáles son las dificultades de abordar esto que estamos planteando. Y porque se plantea el análisis de unas necesidades que está necesitado de desarrollo, es por lo que hay distintos abordajes. Uno puede ser el teórico y hay otro que es mucho mejor, que es el que parte de la propia experiencia. Oyendo hablar esta mañana a Francesc, pues todos nos hemos dado cuenta de que habla desde su experiencia. Diseñé esto, hice aquello, y algo parecido lo vamos a ver ahora. Ahora se trata de presentarles un caso. Podríamos llamarlo de buenas prácticas, pero también de pioneros, de gente de un grupo que va abriendo camino. Todo lo que digan seguro que nos va a parecer encomiable, necesario, y luego surgirán las dificultades para ponerlo en marcha. Y esta tarde en la mesa redonda es donde vamos a tener oportunidad de abordar ese asunto. Pero un buen modelo de aprender es ver qué han hecho otros. Y en el Reino Unido, en la Universidad de Stirling, hay un grupo que tiene avanzado mucho en cuanto a cómo diseñar espacios domésticos para las personas con demencia. Y es lo que Annie Pollock está aquí para presentarnos y para animar también a que puedan ustedes intervenir. No hago la presentación porque la tienen en los programas. Forma parte de un equipo, ella es arquitecta y paisajista, y forma parte de un equipo que tiene un programa, un proyecto realmente de vanguardia, espectacular, que luego se va a caracterizar porque es sencillo, porque se puede implementar sin grandes dificultades y porque nos va a servir como estímulo. Hemos buscado, a la hora de confeccionar el programa, experiencias que fueran útiles para esta jornada. Es verdad que las adaptaciones de experiencias en otros sitios no se pueden comprar de la noche a la mañana. Ahí hay mucho trabajo detrás en lo que ella nos va a exponer, pero nos ha parecido que es el análisis de caso, nos ha parecido que sería muy útil. Entonces les dejo con Annie Pollock, que nos va a contar la experiencia que tienen y que hemos titulado en general como presentación del caso, de un caso internacional de excelencia, para luego ir a ver aspectos de los espacios ya interiores y luego de los exteriores.
Development Centre at the University of Stirling and what it does. The second part is about dementia and what it means. The third part is design for dementia and how it helps. And the last part is about the virtual care home, a revolutionary new idea of putting on information on the web of virtual rooms with information in each room about the do's and the don'ts for dementia. Now, I seem to have lost 2 slides here. Lucy? He perdido dos picturas. My first slide has become lost, so we'll wait for it to come back. But I will start telling you a little bit about it until it appears. I'm going to tell you about the Iris Murdoch building at Stirling University, which was a purpose-designed building to house the Dementia Services Development Centre. It was built in 2002, specifically as a design example of a dementia-friendly building, and we don't seem to still have that. It doesn't matter. If we can't find the slide, no problem. It's only one slide. It was designed anyway as a dementia-friendly building, and whilst it was not designed specifically for people with dementia to use all the time, it's designed to train and help professionals and people who look after people with dementia and to provide advice. It's both a building on 2 floors and also a very attractive open courtyard, which I was lucky enough to design, which provides a space for people to come out from the building into. And I think, don't worry, because it doesn't seem to be there, and it's only one slide. Don't worry, we'll carry on as we are. So, unfortunately, you've missed a picture of the building, but basically it's a single-story, a 2-story white building with a courtyard, and it provides within it 4 demonstration rooms which show the how design can help dementia, not only in the design of the fittings and the fixtures, but also the technology that goes with it to make it easier for a person with dementia to live in a space. The centre itself provides information. It has a library. This is the other slide that's missing, so it doesn't matter. It has a library with a collection of about 12,000 items. It has a library with about 12,000 items in and provides information for anybody who either has a personal or professional interest in dementia. It even provides books by the author Iris Murdoch, a British author who was very well known but who died of dementia. It provides a consultancy service as well to anybody for any particular kind of project they may wish, be it design or be it actually implementation or be it a management regime. It also has an in-bookshop which provides a wide range of DVDs, training packs and books specifically for the person who is interested in caring for or learning about dementia. And it has a fabulous librarian who is the most helpful person you can hope to find. This is my first slide that has appeared, and it also tells about the training, the education and research that is carried on at Stirling. There are short courses, there is work-based training, so you can train anywhere in Europe or the UK, if we can come out and train you. There are healthcare support workers programs, and so on. It also provides education. There are distance learning programs, undergraduate modules, and postgraduate programs that you can learn either full-time or part-time. And it undertakes research into the social and cultural aspects of dementia, policy and practice, and this is where I particularly am most interested in the non-pharmacological interventions, of which obviously one is by design. We, the design consultants, of whom there are three specifically in design, with the aid of others, run design schools where people come to learn about the importance of design in dementia. We also undertake consultancies where we might be sent a set of drawings for a proposed care home or development, which we comment and report on, or we may be asked to look at a building itself and carry out an audit. And the benefit of having an audit carried out, the audit tool, which is revised in the light of research and experience, is that if your building is a shining example of dementia-friendly design, you may gain an award, be it a gold or silver or bronze award. This lasts for 3 years. 3 years only, because in that space of time, people can change aspects of their design that might mean it is no longer totally dementia-friendly. The guidance and publications, which are continually being updated, currently embrace light and lighting, hearing and sound and acoustics, designing balconies, terraces and roof gardens, design features to assist with dementia in acute care and hospital settings, designing for interiors. There is also a garden book that will match this series, but it is currently awaiting updating. But what there is also is another publication which I will tell you about at the end of my presentation. The little red book at the top, up there, provides 10 helpful hints for dementia design in your home, and therefore is particularly valuable for people wanting to care in their own home. This is the team. We have the professor of the Dementia Centre up here, June Andrews. We have the previous professor, Mary Marshall, retired and still very active nevertheless. We have my husband, Ricky, who is the Director of Architecture, and myself, the Deputy Director, the Lighting Director. See the halo round his head. That's very clever for a lighting director. And the Administrator, the Practice Development Manager, and this wonderful librarian who is the most helpful person I've ever dealt with. I'm going to talk a little bit now about dementia, which leads into the whys and the wherefores and the virtual care home at the end. The figures are horrifying. Currently in the UK, 931,000 people with dementia. In Europe, nearly 10 million people with dementia, estimated to rise within 19 years by 75%. So we have to deal with dementia and friendly design. In Asia Pacific, 14 million, rising to 65 million by 2050. That is a challenge. People with dementia have certain characteristics. They are generally older. Younger people with dementia, younger person's onset of dementia, is about 2%. And of course, there are other illnesses that cause dementia too. But generally, they are over 65. They still strive to be independent, to rule their own lives. They want to hold on to their identity and remain themselves. They're working very hard to make sense of the environments they find themselves in and to stay engaged with life about them. But it doesn't always work that way. And even this photograph shows the problems of uneven pavements and how difficult that is for older people. We all rely on our senses. That's how we interact with our environment. We hear, we see, we touch, smell, taste, and there is kinesthesia, which is your ability to work in a three-dimensional sense, to know how your limbs are working in any particular instance. But unfortunately, with normal aging, we can expect certain things to happen. Many older people suffer hearing loss. In fact, from the age of about 40 onwards, people begin a degree of hearing loss. And in addition to that, they may have tinnitus, which is where you hear sounds within your ear all the time. You may have a loss of hearing of high-frequency sounds, but too much low frequency. So machinery, ventilation plant can be really bothersome to the older person. And there is an inability to filter out sound that you don't want, which hearing aids don't help. Anyone who wears a hearing aid will know that it tends to amplify everything, which makes large crowds of people or family gatherings hard to cope with. With normal aging, we can also expect a loss of vision. I suffer from myopia. I can't see long distance. I've always had that. But a lot of people, as they get older, suffer from presbyopia, which is where, in order to read something, you have to hold it like that to see, or put on your glasses, which you can never find. But in addition to that, older people may suffer from cataracts, which is operable, macular degeneration, which is not, and which leads to blindness, glaucoma, which leads to blindness if not caught early enough, and hemianopsia, which is where, due to stroke, you may only see half of something. In other words, somebody eating their dinner may eat only half the food on one side of the plate because they can't see the other half. Loss of sight and hearing, along with a deterioration of other senses, adds to confusion and stress in the older person, and particularly the person with dementia, and increases the chance of falls. The greatest number of hospital admissions for older people in the UK are people who have fallen. And that is a shocking statistic, and you realise if you can prevent that, how much money you can save. People with dementia, in addition to the loss of hearing and vision and certain mobility problems, may also suffer from, or will suffer from, impaired memory, especially recent memory. They may not remember who they were talking to 5 minutes ago, or why they had gone to get something 5 minutes ago, or whether they had put the pot on the stove 5 minutes ago. They also suffer impaired learning. Learning anything new is practically impossible. Impaired reasoning, not understanding. And this results in high levels of stress, and as we all know, stress is very disabling. If you are really stressed about being late for a meeting, you can get to the point where you can hardly function. Now, for a person with dementia, that is a very common thing to suffer from. So they have difficulty quite often, therefore, in adjusting and understanding that they may have sensory and mobility impairments of normal aging. So the person with dementia may forget that they can't see properly and that they don't hear, or that they can't walk well. So we have to learn how to design the built environment to help people with dementia. And the function of our design is to create an environment that enables the person with dementia to make the best use of those remaining senses that they have, and to compensate for the impairments they have, which is cognitive impairment, perceptual problems, sensory impairment, mobility problems, and comorbid conditions such as other diseases they may already have. And I'm going to cover each of these very briefly. The design aims in achieving help for these things is that we are trying to achieve an environment for the person with dementia that is familiar, that seems like home, to relieve that stress that is so damaging, to create a domestic scale, to provide clear and multiple visual clues, to avoid confusion by reducing the distractions that may otherwise take their attention, making the environment, above all, easy to understand and easy to see, providing opportunities for activity and exercise, because we know that activity and exercise not only is good for our health because it strengthens our muscles, getting outside provides vitamin D, but it also increases the hypothalamus at the back of the brain, which delays the onset of cognitive impairment. And we need to allow for privacy and sociability. So by familiarity, I mean designing things that are familiar to the person and the culture they live in. These pictures are either from Australia or the UK, and obviously in Spain you will have different cultural issues. But basically your home should look domestic. You provide activities and things that can alleviate stress. And the kitchen and the living spaces need to look like the one you might have been used to in your own home so that you feel comfortable in it. Clear visibility, multiple clues. For example, in the kitchen, if you have open shelves or glass-fronted cupboards, you can see what is inside them. How many times has one of us been to somebody's house where they say, help yourself to a mug and make yourself some coffee, I'll be with you in a minute. And you look in the kitchen and every door is closed and you have to open every door to find what you want. And it's confusing. We want to avoid that confusion by making everything visible. And similarly, in a living room, taking away anything that could be distracting or problematic, like busy patterns or too many colors. Make the environment easy to use and understand by clear signage. And signage needs to have lettering as well as pictures to help in both senses, because sometimes people may lose their ability to read while still retaining the ability to understand a picture, and providing activity. By signage, it's, friendly signs like that, which says, coming in from the garden, this is your home, so you know where to go. To allow for sociability and privacy, well, in the UK and probably in many other places in the world, care homes are often quite large, and you want to be able to achieve quiet spaces as well as busy spaces. By grouping bedrooms together, you get quiet spaces. These are the pink spaces. Then we proceed to the semi-private spaces, which might be your dining and your lounge or the quiet room, and then to the public spaces, which will be the entrance, activity rooms, the noisy areas. And by keeping them away from each other, we're helping to preserve a degree of calm. For example, you would not want a busy industrial kitchen next door to somebody's living room, because the sound of machinery and low frequency would buzz through the walls and cause problems. If you can define your own front door very clearly by colour and by personal items, it means you can find your place of privacy with ease and dignity. Sensory enhancement is a big thing, because I know, as somebody who is short-sighted, if I take my glasses off, contrast becomes much less between one thing and another. If you see these two pictures, the toilet at the top is all white. For somebody with dementia, they would find that very difficult to locate the toilet pan, the grab rails, or the basin, and this would lead to the potential of falling. By highlighting the toilet seat and the grab rails in a contrasting colour, it makes it very much easier for people to see. However, when we talk about surfaces, we don't want that contrast, because this one, to someone with dementia, can look like a step. And if you lift your foot and wonder if it's a step, again, you might be more likely to fall. So you keep the surfaces similar. Sensory enhancement and hearing loss. As we've mentioned before, the problems of high and low-pitched sounds. Presbycusis is something, again, that older people suffer, which is intolerance generally to loud noise. But we found that with tinnitus, the ability to perhaps go outside and listen to outside sounds, it could even be traffic, birds, wind rustling, relieves the stress of suffering from tinnitus. Having a living space with soft materials to absorb sound helps the acoustics. Visual perception is a big thing. We all of us find darkness and shadow and reflection a problem, but for someone with dementia, that looks like it's wet. And people, older people, and particularly people with dementia, are very frightened of falling. So we want to avoid that. And when you also get shadows as well, you can get an environment that's incomprehensible. The same thing applies outside, where the difference in colour between one and the other is very difficult to understand. Now, in your country, where you have very bright sunshine, glare is much more of a problem. So that white paving in bright sunlight can be a problem for older eyes, which don't adapt so easily, particularly when you go back into the building, which might be quite dark. So you need to be aware of that. And equally, the glare coming in from windows can be a problem. So having a high level of light inside is the way to get around that. Sensory enhancement, touch, tell, and taste are all positive things to encourage. People like to touch things. Handrails are helpful. Being able to work in a garden and touch leaves and foliage and plants is helpful. The smell of bread and fresh coffee is wonderful help to getting your appetite going, as is also being involved in activities that involve creating and making things. Now, I've gone through that quite quickly because I want to talk specifically about the virtual care home, which, as I said before, you can access on the web. It was designed for the Dementia Services Development Centre by my husband's architectural practice, which specialises in design for dementia. What it has is a series of rooms, and we hope that in time, when funding's available, it will grow to include other things such as the garden and townscapes as well. So what we have is you have the room, and then you have a series of information, I for información, and then these light up as you click on them and give you information. So you click on it, one goes on, and that piece of information says, choose age-appropriate pictures. So you want to encourage people to be interested in the artwork on the walls. There's no point in having a French cafe if you live in the Outer Hebrides in Scotland, because it doesn't mean anything. And similarly, no point in having a Scottish view if you're in the centre of Madrid. So have age-appropriate and pictures that mean something. Mount them quite low, 1.2 metres to the bottom, because people with dementia tend to walk and don't easily look up. The pictures should have non-reflective, anti-glare acrylic glazing so that you see the picture and not reflections. Then we come on to the next information point, which is to do with storage. Now, I should perhaps have mentioned before I started, this particular picture is of the flat door, which is a door that would lead to a series of people's bedrooms. It is the entrance to their private space. And people who have wheelchairs may wish to leave them at that point if they can, and store them. So we suggest that the storage is near the flat door, but in such a way that it doesn't clutter up the corridor and lead to trip hazards. It's also useful to have an area near the door which provides somewhere where you can display items of memorabilia that might help that person with dementia realize that this is their front door, something that they remember. And having a space like this allows that to happen, a large enough space for the several occupants that will be using that door. However, we also want to make sure that doors which we don't want the person with dementia to use are well disguised. These may be stores for linen, drugs, cleaning materials, which staff only wish to access. So you would paint them the same colour as the wall, perhaps continue the handrail over them, and otherwise disguise them. And there is a little click-up piece of text that comes with this. You want to keep also the signage, locks and handles minimal on these doors that you're trying to hide. And it's useful to have a sofa or something to sit on near the flat door, because for the older person, they may have been quite tired getting there. They may want to sit and just look in their handbag as they might have done for the key, or take a breather or chat with a friend before they go into their bedroom. Then we come on to the bedroom door, which is the person in a care home or in their own home. It's their door, which demarcates their personal space. And it's very important that that door is meaningful. So again, we have a series of information points, and I'm only dealing with a few of them. There are very many more on the website. But first of all, the doors, personalizing the door with a sign which can be customized with the resident's name or personal photos might help you to find your room. A door color may also help. Some people with dementia find colour difficult to understand, but for many, colour can help. Including also perhaps a house number that might be meaningful to them. It doesn't have to be meaningful within the context of the care home, but it does have to be meaningful for the person. Furthermore, you might put a memory box beside the door, which includes things that again helps the person with dementia realise that this is their home. We have a funny sign on the slide. I'm not sure what this is. Can somebody help me here? Anyway, I'll carry on talking about the memory boxes. It gives me a little bit of spare time. But basically, if you have this little box beside the front door, it means that the resident can put in things which, things which will help them. Now, it might be a picture of them when they were a young person, because quite often people with dementia don't recognize themselves because they think they're much younger than they were. It might be a favorite pet that they have. It might be any number of things, but it allows them to put that special something in a safe place where it can't be fiddled with or touched by somebody else behind a little glazed door. Also, having things like maybe an umbrella stand, and of course if you live in the UK you always need an umbrella because it rains so often, or it might be a nice pot plant. There's any number of things you could consider putting, And once again, obviously, the pictures on the wall need to be meaningful. It's important that where the doors are, the corridor, if it is a care home, because they always have a series of bedrooms off a corridor, it's important the corridor is widened so that there is space to stand and take your time to figure out where you want to go. Again, helping maneuvering space and interest along the corridor. However, it's important to ensure that you don't have bedroom doors directly opposite each other across the corridor, because somebody with dementia coming out of their door and seeing another door directly opposite, their thought will be to go in that other door directly opposite. And of course, it's not their room. So not only does the occupant of that room become upset, but the person who's gone into it becomes very confused. And this is the sort of thing that can cause challenging behavior. So it's important to keep the doors staggered along the corridor. A handrail is very useful to have to grip on because it provides that degree of security that helps you walk along with confidence. Some people can even help use that to help them find where they are. They know how long it is. Don't ask me how, but they do, and I've heard of that. But basically the handrail has to be clearly visible, but you want the back plate, if it's mounted onto the wall, to be coloured the same colour as the wall. And you position it about 1 metre from ground level. It's very important to consider the transition from the corridor into the rooms. Again, you do not want that colour contrast. We say that it should be a similar light reflectance value, no more than 30, in fact a lot less than 30 difference of light reflectance value. And this is a value that many paints, commercial paints, have, so that you can tell how they correspond in colour one to another. Any transition strip that divides the material as well, say from carpet to a hard floor, should also be of a similar light colour, so there's no problem in causing a trip. Then we go into the bedroom, and this is just a standard bedroom. In other cultures, the furnishings may be very different, but the point is the principles are the same. So we'll look at a few of these points. Personal furnishings are extremely useful. If the person with dementia can bring some of their own furnishings into their own bedroom, it obviously helps them feel at home and familiar. With bedspreads, cushions, photographs, anything that they could have brought from their own home. If it's found at some point that these cause a degree of confusion, then of course they can be removed. The colours of floors, walls, doors, architraves round the door, skirtings between the floor and the wall, these all need to provide a good contrast, and this is where you need a minimum of 30 number light reflectance value between them, so that the person with dementia can see where the floor ends and the wall begins. It helps identify where the door is, so that it's all very clear. The other thing we say is, don't bother with patterned wallpapers or patterned floors. Wallpaper is very common in our country. People seem to think that older people like flowery wallpaper. But for somebody with dementia, that's a disaster because they try and pick the pattern off. And in one care home, within about a month of it being repapered, all the patterns had been picked and damaged. Similarly, a patterned floor may look like there's dirt on the floor or something has dropped, so they will try and sweep it or clean it. So we have very plain, simple colours to avoid visual perception confusions. The door, mostly in care homes for reasons of fire escape, they have to have a door closer on. And we suggest it should be a free swing door closer, which I think I'm right in saying is one that only activates when indeed there is a fire. So the door is easy for the person with dementia to use, because a heavy door is obviously very difficult for somebody with a degree of frailty. And this is one very important principle when we talk about toilets. Older people very often need to get up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet. It's a very boring thing to have to do, and you're usually half asleep, but you need to do it. But for the person with dementia, not only are they half asleep and they need to go to the toilet, but they may have forgotten where the toilet is. And so we suggest that you should have a clear view from your bed in either a sitting or lying position to see the toilet seat and its cover, and this is why the cover as well needs to be a good contrasting colour with the toilet pan itself. The big advantage too is if you're sitting on the toilet, you are then looking back straight towards the bed, so you know where to go afterwards, and it is a great help in continence issues. A wardrobe, if a wardrobe can have a degree of a glazing, maybe it's split into two halves so that one half contains the clothes that you aren't going to wear tomorrow, but the other half with a glazed front may have the clothes you're going to put on when you wake up so that you can see them, and so you immediately know, these are the clothes I'm wearing today. If that is not possible, or if, for example, in chests of drawers where you keep your clothes, we suggest that you have clear labelling. The bathroom. There's a lot of pitfalls in the bathroom, and I think this one actually still could have greater contrast in its grab rails and handles than is indicated, but the theory is still there that this is important. So first of all, mirrors. We say ensure that you can easily remove a mirror, because for some people having a mirror is very disturbing because they think that somebody else is in the room with them. They don't recognize themselves. We say provide open shelving so the person with dementia can put their shampoo and so on in a place where it's easy to find, but with a locked door beside where the carer can keep the things like continence pads or medicines under lock and key. Shower controls that are easy to find and easily operated and easily understandable. Clarity of the toilet seat and the lever flush so that it's easy. People with dementia in our country would find the push button type very difficult to operate because they wouldn't understand it. Taps. Taps are a big thing. We actually say use individual taps because that's more common for the person with dementia, certainly in our country, and to use easy crosshead taps because, again, that's something they would remember. How many of us here have been somewhere where we don't know how the taps work, which is hot and which is cold, and you have to experiment to find out? A person with dementia doesn't need to do that. You need to have the taps clearly signed with hot and cold and preferably the colour to reinforce it. The kitchen is important. And many care homes will have a kitchen, and the importance of the kitchen is it helps keep the activities of daily living going. Kitchen units, toasters, kettles need to be of a traditional, recognisable style. A plate rack will help you see the plates. Open shelving, as before, helps you see where things are, and the glass-fronted fridge, which you can get, they're used in bars quite often, can also be helpful if you can get them. If not, you use clear labels to say what things are with wording and pictures. Good lighting. Lighting to not only uplight, but downlight and light the walls so that everything is bright and clear, and particularly lighting over a sink if you haven't got an adjacent window, because that's where the tasks are carried out. 600 lux minimum to light the sink area. Obviously, open bulbs should be shielded so they don't cause issues of glare. A kitchenette area open to a lounge is a very good idea because then the person in the lounge can make a cup of coffee and maintain those activities of daily living that they used to do. Consider a separate oven and a hob, and again, how cookers are varies from country to country, but cooking smells add to the homely atmosphere of an area, and activities in doing small tasks of cooking are very useful. The hob should ideally have a plate to cover the heated bits when they're not in use. A microwave may be useful if a cooker isn't appropriate, but it would need to be very simple controls and supervised by other people. We have the living room, and again, this is very much designed on the UK ideal, but there are principles that apply everywhere. First of all, that you need a focus to your living room. At home, we would say provide a fireplace. This can be something that looks like a fire and is linked to the central heating to provide a focus to that room. Something like a fish tank can be helpful as well, because it gives something to look at, which is activity. But this comes with a warning. You need to have a lid on the fish tank, or the fishes die from overactive feeding by the residents. Locate a TV for easy viewing, but don't make it the central feature of a room because it's very distracting to have TV sound, and some people really don't want it. In fact, ideally, you would have a quiet room with no TV as an alternative space. Consider using different door colors to the outside if more than one lounge accesses into the same outdoor space, so somebody has some clue of where to go back into. Also, highlighting the door a different color to the adjacent windows helps you find the door, and the handle again should be easy to find. The transition from inside to outside is just the same as between rooms. It needs to be easy with no strong color contrast or barrier matting. Provide for activities, radio, cards, jigsaw puzzles, artwork, and appropriate furniture to allow for these activities. A range of furniture of different types and heights will suit a variety of different users, and people come in different shapes and sizes and abilities, so that is incredibly useful. Again, they need to be clearly visible against the color of the floor. The dining room has many similar features to this. We suggest a table layout that encourages staff to eat with their residents. And ideally additional chairs provided for that to allow interaction. A toilet as close as possible to these communal rooms, because to be able to go to the toilet with ease is very important for the person with dementia, and clear signage is needed. The toilet has to comply with your legislation. Negative pressure and careful ventilation will ensure that bad smells don't enter these rooms. Curtain tracks that extend to keep the window area completely free when they're not in use allows the maximum amount of light into the internal space, because us older people need about twice as much light as somebody half my age, and that's me. So you need to get a lot of light, but obviously you need blinds to cut out glare. So you need to allow for bright sunshine and blinds that can help. Chandelier type fittings like this with many light fittings going upwards can provide a good uniform light level, and by illuminating the ceiling you are casting light downwards, which helps. Plug-in lights also, you can then illuminate areas where you are carrying out particular tasks and you need more light. So we have a lot of interesting points there, but equally with windows we need to ensure the outside isn't obstructed by a lot of planting, because although in hot countries people sometimes want to keep the light from coming into the same degree, we do need it to see clearly what we're doing. So what does all this mean? Does it work? Well, it does, and a range of improvements recently undertaken in a UK care home showed that there was 71% fewer falls in the corridors, and that's a lot. And when you consider that all of these falls means putting people into hospital, which costs money, and for people in dementia, with dementia, sometimes they never come out because they get such a severe degree of confusion. 60% reduction in reported physical aggression. Medication for aggression and agitation reduced from 20 times to 1 time per week. That not only is an enormous saving, but it's better for the person with dementia, because all of these drugs, and particularly antipsychotic drugs, have bad side effects. It also showed, as far as food was concerned, where you could have a kitchen and you had nice eating areas, only 3% of residents recorded weight loss, compared with 13% before. 2 residents needed help at mealtimes, compared with 7 before, and there was more quality time to be spent with the residents. With better signage, and particularly to the toilet, before the change, 2 older ladies always needed help to find the toilet and probably became very stressed in trying to find it. After the new graphic signs with wording and symbols were fitted, they could find the toilet without any help, which is a great increase for somebody's dignity, as well as savings in the person being happier and more able. Other improvements showed that 3/4 of people benefited. They were doing more things indoors and outdoors, watering plants, growing plants, helping to fold washing, hanging washing up, setting tables, using the outside. The service users are coming alive again, was the report from the staff, and doing the sort of tasks that they would do in their own home. And this is so important because, after all, none of us wants to end our lives in what seems like a hotel where everything's done for you and you have nothing to do. Boredom can kill as well as dementia. So it's very important that people are kept alive and alert in what they do and enjoy their life as much as they can. And by design, we can go a long way towards achieving that. And that kind of design works for everybody, clarity and so on. However, the other half, of course, is having the management to make it work. Now, this is my last slide, which is the publication I was going to tell you about, which is due out at the end of this month. It's been a long process of collaboration with a lot of very interesting people all over the world, including Norway, Australia, America, the UK. And it's a guide about designing spaces for people with dementia, outdoor spaces for people with dementia, and includes a long look at climatic considerations, how to place the building on the site, why going outside is good for you, and how the importance of vitamin D in staying healthy, design and activities, civil rights, cultural considerations, and case studies from all over the world. So it's applicable both to hot and cold countries. And we hope that it will be a great success. And we also hope that the garden will be the next thing to be put on to the virtual care home guide, but we have to wait for funding to do that, as is always the case. I hope this has been helpful to you, and thank you for listening to me. Muchas gracias.